Can you go a little bit?
Sure.
Thank you.
And T, will you introduce yourself to people also?
Hi, how you doing? Everybody calls me T, but my actual name is T-Shirt. And I don't identify as trans. I actually identify as a female that just loves and enjoys the way I look and dress. And kind of what you were just referring to is that I do challenge that. You know, I don't identify as male, but obviously, like, I don't go around telling everybody that says he or sir. I don't try to correct everybody that says that. But if I'm socializing with you, or if I'm hanging out with you, or if I'm trying to get to know you as a friend, or, you know, whatever, I'm just hanging out with you, of course I'm going to correct you if you think that I'm a guy. I don't, but as far as, and I'm not offended by anybody that refers to me as male. I mean, obviously, if I have this look and this persona, people are going to assume that I'm a male. But by the same token, when it comes to women, this is where it gets a little tricky, is that a lot of women enjoy the illusion, you know, of the male, and can appreciate the fact that I'm a woman, but enjoy the illusion, but by the same token expect a man in terms of interaction at times. So that sometimes can get a little tricky because, you know, you're supposed to be in their eyes masculine all the time, and because I definitely identify as female, I have female traits, and I can be bitchy, I can be moody, you know, I can be all those things. I get cramps just like you know. So those type of things, and I think that sometimes it's real. And you know, I think that sometimes people, women in particular that I deal with, because of the look, they, you know, feel like I should be masculine. They don't even want to hear about some women don't even want to hear the fact that I have a period. It's like, then you don't need to be dealing with me. So I mean, I think they can appreciate the fact that the illusion thing, but that's why I tend not to deal with women who are not comfortable in their sexuality and not open about who they are. You know, and it took me a while to get to that place where, you know, because I did used to deal with women that were, you know, kind of halfway in and halfway out of the closet and that kind of stuff, and it just brought about a lot of problems. But so now, I just primarily deal with women that are very comfortable with their sexuality, that love women, and love aggressive women, whatever term you know people refer that to, but and that, you know, can appreciate that, you know, and so that's where I'm at with it. And a lot of times it's funny because people think that just common folk think that I want to be a man because of the fact that I cut my hair and dress the way I dress, and I you know, just merely educate them and just tell them, listen, I feel comfortable the way I look, it's the same way you feel comfortable with the way that you look. I like my pants, I like my haircut, I like my style, and if you feel uncomfortable with the fact that I identify as female, it's on you, that's something you have to deal with. But I feel comfortable with it, you know, and that's what's important to me. Just try to educate them.
Professor Moore, I asked you this during your presentation. You said you were talking about like transgressors and, you know, people who dress a certain way and look a certain way. And it was a question about whether or not you feel kind of like trapped between this binary male, female, like there's only these two ways of expressing yourself, like either masculine or either really feminine. I mean, how do you guys feel about that? Because you seem to be comfortable embracing your femininity to some extent, but representing kind of a masculine exterior. So do you sometimes feel like there should be some other option? Like sometimes I feel like that. Like it's not fair that you have to say, okay, yes, I'm representing myself as masculine, but really I'm feminine. Like, do you ever feel like caught between that, like only those two choices?
Especially when I have to use the restroom. Yeah, well, you know, like
Which one do you use?
I actually, to be honest with you, I feel very uncomfortable using the male room only because I feel like it's kind of a violation to men if I don't identify that man. But by the same token, to eliminate drama in situations where, you know, you got this whole big scene and I become the freak show, I just use the male's room because, you know, just for that purpose. But primarily, I would feel comfortable if it was acceptable to use a women's room. But I sometimes if I just want to, you know, cause drama, I go to people's, but not very often. Like, and then there are times, honestly speaking, there are times where I just won't go because I just feel I don't feel comfortable going in the male's room, and and I just don't feel like the drama of the females room, and so I just won't go. I just hold it, and that's being real honest. But and that's the sad part about it, because you do feel like, wow, I just wish that it could just be not necessarily, a sign on the door with a woman with a breast and a dick, but not like that, but like something like where it could just be a universal bathroom, where it could say it could be a male and female, anyone can use the bathroom, and it's if they're a way where you can just close the door and anyone can use the bathroom. So I don't want to be like this freak, looking thing on the door and feel comfortable. I wouldn't feel comfortable using that either. But if it was just where it didn't have to necessarily. I mean, I guess if people were more respectful about, gender and sexuality and all that kind of stuff, and people were more mature enough, I guess it could, ideal world could be like that, but, we can't be. So, like I said, I just use the men's room most of the time. And,
I just want to speak to something that you said I thought was interesting. I think that there is a gray area, a place where that you can feel comfortable. I think because we're so socialized and taught that you should be this or that, I think there's a place where it's not a contradiction. It doesn't have to be. It can be something that you kind of create that's like who you are, all the characteristics, and you can do whatever, you can sort of embrace masculine, feminine, whatever those things are traditionally, and not be confused about it or uncomfortable. And so, just to answer or speak to what you said.
Wait, but what are you saying?
Okay.
You think they're...
I think that there's a place where you can be a woman and not be, and still present yourself and have people may perceive you, oh, you dress like a guy, or you're masculine, and not feel uncomfortable because you're not uncomfortable with what it means to be a woman and present that way.
I don't disagree with you at all. For me, I just prefer to be on the opposite end of that spectrum. But for other people, if you choose to identify, whether you're a man or a woman or whatever your gray area is, it doesn't even matter. Like, if that's your comfortability zone, that's your comfortability zone. The problem is that people feel like it has to make sense. Everybody feels like it has to make sense. You have to have a valid explanation, which is why people ask. It could be something as simple as, well, why are you a lesbian? Okay, well then, why are you butch? Just out of assumption, like, well, why does it matter? You know what I mean? So, I don't know. I feel like that gray area, it can definitely exist, but unfortunately in society, people don't realize that everything doesn't always have to make sense. It doesn't have to mean something. Just because you have a short hand, people, I don't know. My mother would probably ask me, well, is she a butch? Well, I mean, why don't you ask her? I don't know. You'd have to ask in order to find out.
Realistically, I think that sometimes I find that even lesbian women or gay men, lesbian women, we like to think that we don't judge other people, we don't stereotype and stuff, and we do the same thing. I mean, like when we walk in the club, we assume that if you see me, you assume that I'm this masculine, wanting to, whatever, wanting to be a man or whatever. And if I see a feminine woman, I assume that she's an ultra femme. She might be aggressive, you know what I'm saying? She might be, So I think that just for people to be able to know how to feel comfortable with communicating with you, they kind of need to know, what do you feel comfortable with, and especially for the heterosexual world, so to speak, is that they need to know, for their own comfortability, and sometimes because they might be questioning and may feel uncomfortable. Like I find that a lot of men feel uncomfortable once they find that I'm a female. It becomes like this, like they challenge me in a way where they'll start to treat me ultra feminine, so to speak. You know what I mean? Because they feel like it's almost like a disrespect. You know what I mean? It becomes like a disrespect. They want to open the door for me when they never did that before, or something stupid like that. And I mean, in the past when I was younger, I would react a certain way. So I've matured, so I don't react the same way. But I just try to educate. But I think that it really boils down to people want to know how to communicate with people. I mean, anybody. I'm not talking about gay, straight. I'm just talking about people in general. People need to know who they're dealing with, how they can communicate with you. And I know it should be this, universal communication, but realistically, that's not how the world works. We want to know who you're talking to, and that kind of stuff.
because men do that. Men definitely do that. Like, at the place where I work, majority, I would say, most of my supervisors know. A lot of my coworkers do not know. And I have this one manager, and he's very weird. Like, because he knows, you know, he feels compelled to treat me a certain way, because that's just traditionally, as a man, how he's taught to treat a woman, even though clearly I don't look like her. This is very obvious. But this guy, every time I hang out with him, or if I see him, and he's a manager, every time I hang out with this guy, we go out, and he's quick to open the door, hey, like, yo, son, I don't need you to do. It's very obvious that I'm not. I do not want you to treat me like a woman, but that's just traditionally set in people's minds. Society trains your mind to believe that this is how it is supposed to be, and this is how it has to be all the time. But that is not the case. And you're right. Unless you go out of your way to ask and find out how to interact with that person, you're just not going to know. No, I correct him all the time, but he's African too, so they, you know, culture, and he's from Africa, so that's it. Well, no, I don't mean like, culturally speaking, he's, you know, he trans, like, he's looking at me like, I don't even know what that means.
Right.
All I know is that you were born a woman, so this is clearly how I have to treat you, and I'm like, yo,
And there's
you don't need to do that.
Trans. There are a lot of African women who look trans, and I find the same thing with African men, is that there are a lot of African women that look trans to them, and they're attracted to that. You know what I mean? And for whatever reason.
Yes, I know in certain cultures that masculinity
Yeah.
in women is actually sex attractive. Kind of hard.
Can you give me just